So my name is Vickie Ramirez. I'm with the Center for One Health Research at the University of Washington, and I support the One Health Clinic in Seattle. And I am your moderator for this session. You've joined Office Hours, live feedback on incorporating trauma-informed design for people and animals in your emergency shelter, part 1. The Office Hours is designed to provide live feedback to emergency shelter providers regarding facility design, which accommodates both humans and animals in the same place. The design experts have been chosen based on their unique abilities to address how design and built environments can support recovery from trauma. Part 1 takes place now and is dedicated to providing feedback to one specific co-sheltering site and part 2 takes place on March 23rd and is an open format Q&A. So any provider can ask facility design questions and receive feedback from our design experts. So first, I'm going to introduce the design experts here today. Our first design expert is Jewell, a professor in the Interior Architecture and Design Department at Florida State University, and a fellow and past national president of the Interior Design Educators Council. She is an NCIDQ certified interior designer and a well-accredited professional. Her research focuses on the design of environments for people experiencing trauma, and she is the originator of the Design Resources for Homelessness initiative, a research-informed nonprofit online information source for architectural designers and organizations creating environments for people who have experienced homelessness. And our second design expert is Dr. Vickie Stuntebeck, the facility design veterinarian with the UC Davis Koret Shelter Medicine Program. In addition to facility design, her interests include proactive population management and infectious disease prevention, as well as building relationships with folks across the sheltering field. And our other group I'm excited to introduce is our shelter providers. So first, Kirsten Jewell is the Housing and Homelessness Division Manager with the Kitsap County Department of Human Services. She oversees strategic planning, manages a portfolio of investments of public funds with nonprofit community partners, coordinates county-wide efforts, facilitates special projects and work groups, and provides community outreach and education. She is also the chair of the Governor's State Advisory Council on Homelessness, serves on the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance Homeless Advisory Committee, the Kitsap Strong Leadership Committee, and the Board of Kingston Cares. Kirsten is also co-chairs the Washington Association of County Human Services Housing Program Committee. That's a lot of words. Okay, we also have Judy-Rae Karlsen, and they're the program coordinator for the first homeless co-shelter project in Kitsap County that you'll hear about today. Judy-Rae is based out of the Departments of Human Services and Housing and Homelessness for the Kitsap County in Washington State. So thank you all for joining us today. And I'm just going to turn this over to Judy-Rae and Kirsten.
Thank you so much, Vickie. I'm delighted that Judy-Rae is here with me today. We thought we would start out by giving a brief overview of the project before we dive into getting the professional feedback that we're really excited to receive. So Judy-Rae has prepared a nice presentation for us to just go through some of the basic aspects of this project. So Kitsap County government took the unusual step of purchasing a fitness center of about 20,000 square feet to convert it into a 75-bed shelter. Typically, we would not be embracing, purchasing a building and doing the renovations, but we did not have a shelter provider that had the capacity to take on this scale of project in our county at this time. So the county is going to own the building and then we'll be subcontracting out the shelter provision to a nonprofit provider that we are already working with. This is a 20,000 square foot building on about 3 acres of property. It's a beautiful wooded lot with a large backyard. Our intent is that we will have 75 guests at a time that will include families with children, singles, and couples. It will be a residential style shelter where people can get a bed and stay as long as they need to while they're working towards permanent housing solutions. The project will provide 3 meals a day, as well as laundry, showers, and storage of people's possessions. And on site, there will be connections with robust supportive services such as medical, mental health, dental, substance use recovery, and job placement. In addition, there will be case management for housing stability to help people use this shelter as a stepping stone to permanent housing. This will be the very first long stay co-shelter model in our county, and we're very excited about that. We've been working with local veterinarians to provide future on-site basic veterinary care, as well as with our local humane society to provide larger scale services. The building renovation does include specific area for animal care, but we do have some limitations because we're not building from scratch, right? We have to use the building that we already have, and we are trying to incorporate as many best practices as possible, and very excited to hear what the experts say today. We're planning for up to 20 animals at a time, around 10 to 12 dogs and 8 to 10 cats, as well as assorted other small animals that people have as their pets. So you can see in the photographs here, it's on a beautiful large site. The picture in the bottom center is the sort of the backyard looking towards the full-size gymnasium that is included in the building. And then the picture in the lower right is the picture of the backyard. The site plans do include space for both a children's play area that will be fenced, as well as a pet dog run, and potentially a small off-leash area. In the inside, it's pretty much a series of large spaces, including a racquetball court, aerobics room, weightlifting room, and a full-size gymnasium. In addition, there are locker rooms and offices, which will be used for case management and supportive services. One of the major components of the renovations of the project is expanding the hygiene facilities in the building to accommodate up to 75 people. On the architectural layout here, you can see where the starred area is. That is where the pet care area will be specifically. We are intending that people will be able to keep their animals with them in their shelter beds. And you can see in this area, there are the number of shelter beds in each of the sort of adjoining rooms is indicated here. The intent is that people will be able to keep their animals with them during the time that they're in the shelter building. There's some of the questions that we used as we were planning the facility upgrade, and we can come back to those. You can see in the pet care area, we do have a specific exam room for the pet care to receive basic services. That includes a washer and dryer, refrigerator, and things like that for medications. And then there's a small kennel area when animals do need to be kenneled, as well as an isolation room and a storage locker area for people to keep their pet supplies. We have had a lot of input already from an awesome steering group made up of area veterinarians and animal care professionals, as well as an awesome architect and design firm, Rice Fergus Miller, which is local to our area. But we still have a lot to learn. We've been really excited to find so many amazing partnerships out in the larger community who are interested in supporting co-shelter design projects like this. So we're really excited to hear what the experts have for us in the way of improving our design, or using this as an example for maybe how it could be done better. We acknowledge that we're already fairly far along in the design process, and that, as I said, we did have limitations on what we could do with this particular space, but we're always learning, and our hope is to build several more co-shelter facilities in the future in Kitsap County. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jill Pable, and I'm with Design Resources for Homelessness. I hope that you can see my screen at this point. My area of contribution for today is along the lines of the human and human-animal sorts of relationships. By way of a little bit of background, I facilitate a nonprofit called Design Resources for Homelessness. I welcome you to come to the website for, 5 or 8 different case studies, research summaries, spotlight reports on how to design for persons in trauma, which is a part of course, what we're talking about today. Several folks had mentioned that I should mention this. I'm the world's worst marketer, but 2 colleagues and I recently came out with a book from Rutledge called Homelessness in the Built Environment that talks a lot more about some of the points I will bring up today if you'd like some more information. So there is the name of it and the website as well. There are many things I could talk about today. Before I do so, I just want to thank Kirsten and Judy-Rae and My Dog Is My Home to make this workshop possible. There's so much to be done here. There's so many good things that need to happen desperately. And I think this is a great way to get that started. In preparation for today's session, Vickie and I kind of looked at various parts of the floor plan. And so there's many things I could say, but I think I would like to kind of concentrate on just a few things. Then Vickie will actually follow up on some of those things as well. So here I'm looking at the floor plan that Kirsten just introduced to us, which is the gymnasium and so forth. The thing I'd like to bring up is that when you've got both humans and animals at play, it becomes really important that we're able to accommodate the needs of both. For example, I'm zoomed in here to the main entrance, which is right here where my mouse is, which I hope you can see. This is the existing reception, and so many spaces such as this have to actually use, repurposed spaces. This happens a lot, and a lot of the shelters that I consult with are dealing with existing conditions. So that's certainly a common thing. But one thing I would say here is if we're accommodating both 75 persons, but also companion animals, there's going to be a lot of coming and going past this reception desk, which is making this area, I would suggest, pretty tight for free and open passage, because people will stop here and linger, of course. So if I had won the lottery and I could change this floor plan, I would suggest freeing up this area a lot more to allow, more passage. One thing of persons who are experiencing trauma is that they may be in a bit of a heightened emotional state. So, physical compressing of spaces is something you really want to avoid to not make matters worse, if you will. And kind of similar to that, once you get past the reception desk and you start to move into here to the, the various sleeping spaces, the nature of this building is such that people pass along the central corridor to get down to the lounge and dining and so forth, which means they're going to be passing by spaces where people are trying to sleep, and companion animals are too. So one thing Vickie and I had suggested was this might be an excellent place to kind of carve out a foyer, if you will, that gives a little bit more concealment and acoustic privacy for these various bedroom areas that one passes by before getting down here to the lounge area and to the pet care area as well. So there's many more things I could talk about, but I wanted to move also to another part of this project, which I think is going to become very important, and that is where the companion animals are staying most of the time, which Vickie confirms for me is probably best with their people themselves. So if I come over here, I want to just share with you some very preliminary sketches that we brainstormed. I would love to hear your thoughts on them as a way to start to bring people with their companion animals into a workable but flexible living situation. For example, you probably noticed that some of these sleeping spaces are very large, which means they're going to be in the racquetball courts, they're going to be in the yoga gyms and so forth. And I'm also told that they have access to some partial height panel systems. So one idea might be to craft, either 2-person or maybe more person sorts of pods to which both animals and their people could stay. So for example, bed 1, bed 2, and then underneath that bed might be, for example, a space for a dog. And then if we had a swing gate here that would allow people to move freely in this pod with their animals, that might, bring a little bit of ease to the situation. Also, sight lines would be easy in here for bed checks or for conversing amongst neighbors or staff and so forth. So there's one idea for 2 humans and a dog. Here's another idea similar to that, but instead it would be 1 to 2 cats with a raised cattery here that is built in with all these movable pieces of furniture here that would, again, allow the animal to be in safe proximity when they don't need kenneling or other care in the other area of the shelter. And then lastly, this could be scaled up with panel systems to allow, for example, communities of, say, 6 or 8 people. This one, for example, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 persons with 1, 2, 3 safe spaces for, in this case, dogs, or it could be a cattery instead. So I think there's possibilities using sort of a modular system, small system of furnishings that these could be kind of set up and then reconfigured if necessary in order to make everybody as happy as possible and as calm as possible. So just a few initial ideas I'd love to hear any comments on from others, either today or on Thursday. So I'll send it on to Vickie at this point, who's going to do some expansion on some of those ideas. Thank you.
All right. So the pods are marvelous. As Dr. Pable said, there's so much value, as you all know. You showed up here to listen in keeping pets with their people, and so that's a real accessible opportunity to incorporate that into the design of the facility. And I'll be touching on that a little bit more a little bit later on. So briefly, I just wanted to mention that, again, my name is Vickie Stuntebeck. I am a white woman with bright green hair, and it's hanging down, it's straight. I'm wearing glasses and a blue t-shirt. And I am a veterinarian, and my expertise is in animal sheltering. And there's just not a lot of information and evidence out there when it comes to co-sheltering pets and their people together in the best possible ways. And so I'm stealing a lot of what I am sharing today from the field of animal sheltering, but I think a lot of it is relevant and useful. But time will tell if there's surprises out there as we learn more about the folks who are giving this a try. So what I'll be working through presenting to you today is just some very brief operational considerations that you're going to want to take into account. What does it mean to try to mitigate stress for the animals in coming into the facility? Bring some attention to the incredibly great outside spaces available for this organization. Talk about noise a little bit, and then finally really spend some time digging into animal housing. So this is one example, and it's not the only example of where I'll spend some of my time today, bringing up aspects that aren't purely related to the structural design of the facility. And this is intentional because even though all levels of resources, expertise, what is possible or not are going to vary from one organization to another, from one facility to another, we have a lot of decisions, choices, and opportunities that we can control when it comes to what happens inside the facility. And that relates to the facility design too. So I want to make sure that people remember to expect the best, but plan for the worst. And what I mean by that is that those situations where there is a challenging pet coming in with a family or a guest are probably going to be infrequent. But when they happen, we want to be prepared for them so that it doesn't throw the whole system into disarray, and that we're prepared to provide the most seamless service that we can for the guests, for the animals, and make sure the staff are able to kind of keep doing what they need to do as well. So one of the things that is going to be important is to establish protocols for challenges that are likely to arise medically, behaviorally, if they remain on site. And so the county folks with Kitsap County have established veterinary support, which is wonderful. That's going to be a real asset to their program. I would also suggest that there's some sort of behavioral expert who's available to provide some support as well. And those protocols are also going to allow personnel who are working day to day on site to potentially perform initial assessments, start initial treatment or care, and communicate about those things then to the experts down the line, the veterinarian or the behavior expert. Another thing that I recommend is that there are predetermined criteria that can certainly be changed over time as we learn more, but establish some criteria for situations, health conditions, or behaviors that can and cannot stay on the premises. And some examples of this are going to be diseases that are infectious between animals, or zoonotic diseases that animals might be able to pass to humans. Safety risks coming from behavioral situations that could pose dangers to people or other animals. And some special examples that came to my mind as I was planning this talk: females in heat, animals that are pregnant or nursing who have babies, urine marking, particularly among intact males, and then dogs that have a particularly strong prey drive and how that might play out as we're trying to manage them within the facility. So before I dive into the words on this slide, I want to point out that I shamelessly stole the blue diagram over here on the right from a report that Dr. Pable co-wrote. And it's specifically with regard to the principles that are called fundamental human needs that people experiencing trauma and homelessness value and seek out for themselves and their families. And I wanted to pull these things out, both the icons and the list that we have here, as well as this headline of promoting opportunity for choice while balancing program needs and safety and comfort. Because this is Dr. Pable and I have been delighted to collaborate on this project, because we're coming from different zones of focus, but everything we're saying aligns beautifully in this really awesome way. So these same ideas that are important for folks experiencing trauma and homelessness play a role for mitigating stress in animals as well. And so some of the things that we think about as facilitating reducing stress levels so that animals can be the best selves that they can be given the situation include making sure that they have opportunities for positive human interactions, and that's co-sheltering. So our whole facility is setting up that situation, which is wonderful. We want to make sure that animals have ample opportunities for enrichment and exercise, and we want them to have the opportunity to work both their minds and their bodies. And we want to make sure that the environment, to the extent possible, promotes a restful, calm state for them when needed. And key components of this in a co-sheltering facility, I think, are going to be making sure that we're being conscientious about keeping different species as far apart as possible, providing opportunities for choice where possible, and offering animals a sense of control or predictability about what's going to happen in their day-to-day experiences. So this picture on the left that's kind of buried under these other pictures is a picture from the current outdoor space at the Kitsap facility. They've got this beautiful yard, and I'm going to jump out of my PowerPoint here to show you briefly what that looks like. Just to orient you to what we're seeing here, this is the overall facility. Here's the main entrance, but over here on the right side of this diagram is this huge green space that's already fenced in. They have a designated pet area where the dogs can go to relieve themselves. They have a children's play area. They have some other spaces designated over here. But to go back to the presentation, there's so many cool opportunities with this green space. And these are just some of the ideas that I came up with, but the sky's the limit here. You could have potentially some sort of timeshare situation where folks take turns taking their dogs out to play individually, going for walks in the green space, just chilling. outside. You could have designated time periods where you treat it like a dog park, where folks can go out with their dogs and let them run around with each other and have a great time and sniff and all of those things. And there's lots of possibilities. I know weather's a concern everywhere, but particularly to this area, we're worried about rain, cold temps, that sort of thing. And there are opportunities to potentially provide some amount of cover if needed so that the space can be used as flexibly and as often as possible. So that's a huge asset for this facility. They are so lucky. And dogs aren't going to be the only ones who could potentially benefit from some of this fantastic outside space. Catios, if we can find a spot where the cats can hang out, where they won't have to interact with dogs. People can go in and spend time with the cats, getting fresh air or not. And even the other critters, potentially there can be some safe outdoor enclosures where they get opportunities to get out of the facility and just relax, catch some fresh air, and just have some opportunities to explore and interact with their environment in a different way. The next topic I'm going to talk about here is noise management. And Dr. Pable also alluded to this in her section. And when I'm talking about noise management, what I'm thinking about as being important factors at this particular facility is noise that's going to come from dogs and bother all of the animals who are there, as well as any people who are there, but also the noise that's going to be generated just from the normal day-to-day activities, folks coming and going, just the traffic in and out. And this is a particularly big challenge for the particular facility that the Kitsap folks are renovating. It's an old gym. It's a very open floor plan. Dr. Pable talked about the central corridor where almost everybody's going to be moving through to get from one point to another. And so some of the ways that we can talk about mitigating that or reducing the impacts of whatever noise is present, there are opportunities when you're actually building walls or spaces. I think they're past that point with this particular facility, but it is a consideration to construct walls in a way and use particular materials so that it's harder for sound to travel through those surfaces. So it's not just a run-of-the-mill wall, it's a special wall. But remember, I'm a veterinarian, so I'm not going to say anything more than that about the wall. Just know that it is an option. Another feature that you can include in a facility is adding sound-absorbing objects into the space. So we've got a picture of sound-absorbing baffles up here in the upper right corner, which can be hung from the ceiling and help with the echoey situation that you get when you've got the really high ceilings in particular. And then wall panels, they come in all kinds of really cool patterns and colors, and it's basically art in a lot of situations. So there's a lot of great opportunities there as well to make the room, the space less echoey when needed. The next thing, this is, sorry, a big hodgepodge, bear with me, but what I'm trying to point out is that there's a lot of opportunities that don't need to involve big investments. These are sort of moderate investments to very low investments of resources or effort to get some real benefits for mitigating sound. So having doors that can be closed at times when needed can help mitigate sound, and opened with that's not going to be the routine state. And doors that can be closed, having doors available is also going to provide a side benefit aside from noise mitigation. If we have animals that are loose and scared and stressed and frantic, if we need to confine them in that space until they're safely confined again, the doors are going to be really valuable for that. We can invest in these sound absorbing partitions that can be moved from one place to another, set up, taken down as needed. You can put blankets up on the wall. It's not the prettiest thing, but it is an effective choice. And then just straight up weather stripping in gaps along the bottoms of doors, along the door frames. These are all aspects of sound mitigation that will add up to help make noise less of a challenge in any facility. And here's another place where you may notice that I'm not going to spend my time here just talking about the structural facility, but I want to emphasize that noise mitigation and abatement is the best possible opportunity you have is preventing it, especially when we're thinking about the noise that's coming from dogs who may be in the facility. And as I mentioned earlier, that veterinarian and behavior expert support can play a really crucial role in helping individual dogs who may have particular challenges, anxiety, arousal, things that are going to make them contribute to the noise more. They can help alleviate that. The other ways that we can help prevent dogs from getting aroused and barking is managing traffic. And Dr. Pable talked about that from the lens of the people experiencing the flow and people being in different places at different points in times. But I'm gonna pull out of my slideshow here again and pull up a diagram. So hopefully you can see that okay. So Dr. Pable, these pink arrows again are just highlighting that central corridor. That's everybody's going to be using this, whether they're coming or going, getting from point A to point B. And so there's going to be a lot of traffic and a lot of opportunities to generate noise here. And Dr. Pable also mentioned some of the challenges with the way the reception area is laid out and mentioned the possibility of that foyer, whether you could put up a permanent or even panels, a temporary wall there. It's going to prevent any dog who may be hanging out in this space from being exposed to the unpredictable experience of people and animals entering the facility, potentially leaving the facility, and just seeing something happening that they're getting excited about. And so if we can just disrupt that line of sight, some of the sounds that come with that experience, any dogs who might happen to be in this space are going to hopefully be quieter in general. Back to here. And some of the traffic management is going to come from not just how you use the space, but how you use the space within time. So it's probably going to be helpful to designate certain spaces as dog-free zones, at least for short-term time periods, right? So keeping dogs out of potentially the lounge area for a particular time period, or a particular sleeping area. Set a time during the day where maybe there's going to be no dogs in there, just so that if there is a particularly noisy guest, canine guest, there's an opportunity to relax. And then also I want to pull up the diagram again and bring up the possibility of, again, it may not be an all the time option, but setting up time windows or transient spaces where a guest and their canine friend could move to a different part of the shelter, such as over here when it's not being used for its normal day-to-day functions. Perhaps a family could retire over here and just chill in a quiet space where there isn't traffic coming and going. The dogs can just decompress. You could also do something similar over here on the right in the lounge area. You could set up partitions and create a nice little decompression area. Not quite as isolating. They're still going to hear things around the partitions, but there is an opportunity to sort of just be in a personal space for a period of time. And that's going to help everybody just bring the energy and the arousal levels down. More prevention, exercise, and enrichment. And I acknowledge that every animal on here is a dog, but that's because I am talking about noise prevention. Every kind of animal needs exercise and enrichment, but these are just some of the many opportunities that a co-sheltering facility can incorporate. And this one in particular with their, again, fabulous outdoor spaces to help dogs get physical and mental exercise and enrichment and reduce the need or desire to spend any time barking. And I just wanted to share this. It's pretty familiar for folks in the animal welfare field. A lot of animal shelters will use an enrichment schedule for the animals in care, but this is something that could be implemented at a facility where there's a routine for which days have which types of activities. We're changing it up for a little bit of good variety, but also there's an element of predictability, right? Like, oh, it's Kong Day. I'm so excited it's Kong Day. And there's also opportunities here for the guests to potentially pitch in and help set up enrichment activities, either for their own pets or for any of the pets who are happen to be there at that time. So on to housing. So some of the considerations with housing that I'll be focusing in on. I want to talk about what the environment surrounding the housing unit is like. And then I'm going to zoom in and talk about some of the important features of a housing unit, which includes how big it is. We want it to be an adequate size. We want to have a thoughtful interior setup of the furnishings inside the housing unit. And then ideally, there's a variety of different options available. And then when we're talking about the co-sheltering situation, some extra features that are going to be extra important potentially, and do seem to be important for this Kitsap facility, the ability to move, take down, set up, or move from point A to point B is going to be very important. As the guests coming and going, the pets who are there are going to change over time, where they're staying and whatnot, how long they're staying. We want them to be easy to clean well. And we want them, whenever possible, to promote safe and fulfilling human-pet interactions. And I'll talk a little bit about some ways that the housing can do that. So in terms of surrounding environment, Dr. Pable talked a little bit about the bed areas and the wonderful pod idea that can support pets staying in close proximity to their people. And I'll also spend a little bit of time on that. But a lot of the housing units that are going to fit in those personal spaces are not big enough to be a 24/7 confinement option for any animal, dogs, cats, critters, etc. So we want to think of those as like a short-term confinement option, potentially overnight, and potentially for short periods over the course of a day as well. So in addition to those, which I will talk about here, I want to talk about having a dog kennel ward, cat kennel ward, and then possibly having some sort of designated or flexible zones around the perimeters of the bedrooms where animal housing units could be moved to. So in this picture, it's a zoomed in picture of the kennel area. And what I'm recommending to the Kitsap folks is that this is the dog kennel area. So certainly cats could live in here if there's no chance of a dog entering and spending any time in here. But in general, this is going to be a dog kennel area because cats and other animals are incredibly stressed by living in proximity, smelling, hearing, seeing dogs. And so obviously some of those species might come in with a housemate dog, and that might mean that they can spend some time in close proximity. But in general, animals from different households, we don't want to have dogs in any sort of proximity to any other type of species. So don't worry about reading all of the text on this slide. There's a lot here, and the slides will be shared later. I'm happy to email them, anything. But what I'm trying to emphasize by leaving all those words on there is that there's a lot of things that go into creating a dog kennel that is a reasonable place for a dog to spend a fair amount of time in. So baseline, we want it to be a double compartment kennel. Provides the dog with opportunities for choice about where they're going to be relative to people coming and going from the room, where they're going to eliminate relative to where they're snacking, chewing, resting, etc. And the optimal configuration for a double-sided kennel is what you're seeing on this slide, front to back configuration. And this also facilitates cleaning, caring for the dog, and in the off chance there's a dog that just is so stressed in the setting that they're not safe to handle, they can be moved from one side to the other and stay in here for 24/7 if needed. Not ideal for a lot of reasons, but again, if it takes them a little while to acclimate, it can be done humanely. Another configuration option is the side-to-side option, and that might need to be what the Kitsap folks go with if they're able to do this, just because of the configuration of the room they have available. has a lot of the same benefits of the front to back, just doesn't allow the dog to retreat and have quite the same amount of control and preference expression, but still incredibly important and valuable. And then in the pet care room, I'm just going to briefly show that picture again. There are these gray rectangles, which I think we're originally thinking that's going to be cage housing for cats or other critters. But these types of cages, which you might traditionally think of as cat cages, double compartment, are actually totally great for a lot of very small dogs or puppies. And I want to draw attention to the fact that our friend here on the top clearly demonstrated a preference to eliminate away from the area where they're spending their time now. So with some modifications, this can be a great housing unit for a small dog. We want to add some furnishings here, and as you can see, the friend on the bottom, the light situation is less than ideal. But otherwise, this is a great setup for littles. And they actually at times can feel safer having a little bit closer confines than the big dog kennel. So coming back to that idea of the pods, whether they're temporary with partitions or built into the environment, very valuable for the animals to be able to stay in proximity to their people, for the people and the animals. And we want to make sure that the dogs are either in their crate or somehow under the control of their owner, gated into their pod, on a leash, etc. And we're going to want to consider having a dogs only ward so that the proximity of the dogs to other animals from other households isn't causing those other creatures more stress. And extending from this model of the pod with a dog, we have the opportunity to use up a similar footprint in the pod with housing units like these that could be used for critters or cats. Now, I want to emphasize that for all species that we're talking about here, none of these are housing units that any animal could spend all of their time in. Bigger is better, and none of these are big enough. And so all of the animals living in or spending time in these would need regular opportunities to get out of the cage. It's more intuitive with the dog, right? We don't have them live in the crates. It seems like the cat could live in this space, but the cat is going to need an opportunity to get out. The rabbit's going to need an opportunity to get out and spend some time getting exercise and mental stimulation. And I wanted to emphasize the species separation note again. These are two of my bad pets, and my dog and my cat hate each other. I'm shocked that I even have this picture. And so if I'm imagining myself ending up at this facility, my cat would not be able to live happily in a pod in proximity to my dog. So my cat would need an alternative option. And so other possibilities besides a kennel setup or the transient confinement in the pod setting is to have room housing units that can be used to house animals from the same household or individually. Not going to be an option in a lot of places. Obviously, like this is more space than a lot of the individual human guests will be getting. But some of the benefits of this are that the people can go in and spend time with the animals. The animals have a lot of choices, a lot of space to exercise their minds and their bodies. And it just pulls the animals and the people out of sort of the day-to-day normal traffic of what's happening in the facility. Room housing for cats is just as great of an option as it is for dogs. And these are some enclosures that could potentially be a space that a cat inhabits 24/7, but probably wouldn't fit in the pod setting. And so lots of possibilities there. Cats love vertical space. They like separating their litter from their resting areas. And so lots of cool opportunities here. And all of these things that I've shown here have varying levels of how easy they are going to be to move from point A to point B. Where up here, this one's set in place on top of an existing floor, but all the rest of these could be collapsed or wheeled somewhere else. But some are heavier than others, etc. And so just some different considerations there, but varying levels of expense investment too. Another option to consider is what we call the quad, which is more traditional cat cage housing. But what's nice about this is we have portals that are going both side to side and up down. And the portals can be closed off to provide 2 double compartment housing units potentially for 2 different cats, or you can open it up if you have the space to do so, so that 1 cat or 2 cats from the same household could inhabit all 4 spaces. And so they're getting benefits of having vertical choice, more room to move about, all sorts of good things here. And as you can see, it's on wheels, it's movable, very flexible opportunities there. Basic recommended cat double compartment housing setup. Again, don't get caught up in the words right now, but there's a lot of considerations that go into making a double compartment a good space for a cat to live. And even so, in shelters, we generally say that this is going to be a really good choice to house a cat for up to about 14 days. And anything longer than that, we call a long stay. And so if a feline guest is going to be staying longer at the co-sheltering facility, we also ideally would have other options for them to have a place to spend time and to live besides cage housing for their own welfare. Setting up a cat ward would be a cool option if the cats can't stay in a pod in proximity to their owners. You can set up banks of cages, one quad, multiple quads, and have a big open space in the middle set up with cat trees, shelves, whatnot, chairs for the people. And the cats can timeshare and have opportunities to come out of the cage, get exercise, snuggle with people, but then go back to their familiar cage housing unit. And the nice thing about the cat ward is you're taking the cats out of, again, comings and goings of the normal day-to-day business of everything else that's happening in the facility, which is really helpful in particular for cats, but also all animals. So that is where I am done. These are some resources that we wanted to make sure you had access to. And again, these slides will be shared if they're not yet, and you're also welcome to email me. So don't worry about writing these down. And then contact info for all of us who've been speaking to you today. But with that, I am done. And I think we'd all be very interested to hear what questions or comments anybody wants to send our way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all so much. It was super informative, and there's a lot of really good questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to skip my questions until we get everyone else's done. Though I am going to take a second, and I'm not really sure how it works because it's my first time using Whova, but I did just share the poll results of who's in the room. And of 90 answers, just so you know, as you're speaking to people and where your questions are coming from. My alarm wanted to beep. That of the 90, 27 are looking at modifying the existing shelter. 16 are retrofitting kind of in the way of Kitsap. And 5 people are building it from scratch. So that's really exciting. And then 31 people are interested in it from that animal welfare perspective, and 34 are just interested in learning about it today. So let me get back to the questions. So the first individual is asked, I guess the dots are confirmed. In a communal allergies, whether that be staff who are allergic, other residents who may be allergic.
Yeah, you broke up just a little bit, but I think the question was about managing people allergies to animals.
Allergies of staff or clients.
Right. And I'll say a little bit about that, but then I'm going to strongly encourage anyone who's tossing that about in their mind to go to those co-sheltering guidelines that you can find online for free. They've got a whole bullet list of ways that you can mitigate the impacts of allergies on folks who are allergic to animals. But basically, to the extent that's possible with your daily operations, trying to keep your different types of animals in particular spaces is going to facilitate that. And I think probably cats and some of the critters are some of the most likely to generate allergic reactions. And so if there's an opportunity to actually designate one or two or more of the bedrooms as a cat-free zone for those folks who aren't going to be able to be in proximity to them, that would behoove that. That being said, I think it's not easy to manage, but it's very doable. And again, I highly recommend you go check out those co-sheltering guidelines because they've got some really good detailed opportunities and recommendations there for that.
Great. Does anyone have, I'm off video to make sure it's connecting well. Does anyone else have any ideas or thoughts about that?
Just kind of thinking about that in the specific instance of the Kitsap floor plan, it strikes me that it already has some fairly sequestered sort of rooms. You know, one of them is in the racquetball court area, one of them is in the yoga room and so forth. So I think their floor plan might naturally, to a point, lend itself to a little bit of sequestration of, you know, allergy sufferers away from perhaps the worst offender animals who would be producing those. So that might work to their favor.
There was also a discussion on HEPA filtering in the various rooms and good cleaning protocols. That is a major issue. A major issue whenever we're talking about co-sheltering is the allergies and the smell. So I think that can be mitigated.
Great. Thank you, Judy-Rae. Let's move on to the next question. Have you considered, and do you have any recommendations for whether to allow / how to manage aggressive dogs?
Well, I certainly welcome Judy-Rae or Kirsten if that's something that you've been tossing around. But from my perspective, as I shared in my presentation, sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Let me know if it's bothering anybody else. Have a plan and criteria for what is and is not going to work on site. There's going to be some situations where an animal is simply too stressed and cannot be humanely or safely managed in the facility you have available. Animals who are stressed and have experienced trauma and upheaval sometimes behave in ways that their families wouldn't predict either. So just have a backup plan. In the case of the county folks here, they've got a pre-existing relationship with the shelter in the area. So that may bring some opportunities to potentially keep the animal with the family, but not necessarily in the same space, right? If the animal can't safely be handled at the co-sheltering facility, maybe it can be moved to the shelter where they're more equipped to safely and humanely handle dogs who are behaving fractiously. And so having plans in place for when that happens is going to be helpful. But then also veterinary oversight and that behavioral expert support can help look at an individual animal and say, okay, I know about these behavioral support medications, and I think that given the circumstances, there's going to be some benefit to this animal. We can manage this here for now, and let's see what's going to happen. So there's lots of possibilities there, but you definitely need to pull in other people who can help you. It's not something that you should try to go alone as a agent running this facility.
I might just add, Vickie, you're totally right about having medical support if it's a medical issue for that animal. Although we have also built in with the Kitsap Humane Society for assistance for behavioral or sheltering needs, and CARE, who's a conference supporter, is also helping us on our steering committee. So we have a lot of programming things that we need to still figure out. Getting through the facilities part, which you have both been extremely helpful, is the phase where we're at, but programming is definitely going to be phase 3.
For sure.
Awesome. All right. Next question. In a co-sheltering model, how would you work around clients that may actually be triggered by animals? Which I think is a great question.
It's a wonderful question. As a veterinarian, it's going beyond my zone of expertise. I don't know if Dr. Pable, you feel like you have some background that you could contribute there, but that's going to be a thing to plan for.
That's a tricky thing if, they are seeking support from a shelter that is accepting animals. One thing that may help, though may not solve it, is to have sort of an emergency escape hatch secondary exit or entrance if, that person is suitable to use that separate entrance that would keep them most of the time away from those animals a little bit more, gives them more direct access to their sleeping space or to, a public space where animals were not allowed. But I suspect that's going to be a pretty tall order. I mean, if the triggering is so sensitive as to even be, happening from sound or from smell or something like that, that's going to be a tricky thing for sure.
If I could chime in here too. So I think we recognize that in situations like that, we might not refer somebody to this particular shelter if that was an issue for them. All of our shelters get all of their referrals through our coordinated entry program, and we do have an initial screening to help identify which is the choice of shelter that's the most appropriate for a particular household's needs. And so I think what your question prompts is a really good opportunity to make sure that in our intake criteria for our coordinated entry program, there is a question about whether someone would be able to peacefully and successfully live in a shelter where there are animals. So that's a great prompt for us to make sure that that's part of it. And then we would, of course, then if somebody said, no, I really can't, that's not going to work for me, then they would get referred to a different shelter instead that didn't have animals.
That sort of raises another question that I think would be a policy matter to work out. And that is, some companion animals are adorable and, people will want to, approach them and pet them and so forth and so on. And their family may or may not like that. So there may need to be some sort of guidelines set up, either time or, when it is okay to interact and so forth. So I think that's going to be necessary as well.
I just had a little funny flash. So I went to the National Alliance on Homelessness Unsheltered Conference in California a few weeks ago, and they had these, when you had your lanyard, they had color-coded lanyards that were like, yes, I don't mind you approaching me, or, another color was, I am trying to keep social distance, and another one was, please stay away from me because I am very concerned. And I was thinking, oh, maybe you could have some sort of like color-coded tag or leash or something on an animal that would help everybody communicate without having to go through all of the saying it over and over again, like, at this time I would prefer that you do not approach my animal or something like that. So I don't know, that's something we can definitely explore, and there might be some other ideas that you all have for that too.
Yeah, I've seen stop and go signs like that used outside of sleeping pods too, that give, the people and the animals that live inside them the ability to either say, no, not at this time, or yeah, this is fine. Mm-hmm.
Great. We have reached the end of the session. I would go on, except for there is a part 2 session on Thursday. So maybe we can, I'm going to pass the rest of the questions on. In the exit time, Kirsten, would you mind sharing your screen with that page of all the juicy? Take a look at that before they head off, because quite a few people were interested in that list. And thank you again to our speakers today. It was so informative and exciting.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the feedback.